Hey, welcome to the Mall Podcast. I'm Joël here with Dan.
And I'm Rick. And I sure do love doing these, just sitting down chatting with you about what are we going to talk about today?
Yeah, me too. That's why I started this podcast. Honestly, I'm glad people listen. Sometimes I'm amazed people listen. But my favorite thing to do is us just talking about stuff, which is what today's episode will be. I'm working on a new book. It's a big book. It's probably the biggest concept I've ever worked on in my life. And it may be heresy by the time it's all done. I'm not sure. But to make sure
we'll see if we can keep it from that.
What's that? G.K. Chesterton, he said, I tried to start my own heresy and then I finally got it nailed down and I realized it was Christianity. So G.K. is my favorite man. So
maybe we could write this one under a pen name just in case.
In case I get excommunicated, right?
Yeah.
So here's my concept. I believe that above all else, faith is awareness. It's total. It's the ever increasing awareness of who God is and who we are. So that's my premise, right? That faith is awareness, and that at something happened in the Garden of Eden. I don't know exactly what happened. We don't know exactly what happened, but we lost total awareness, the ability to completely understand our relationship with God, and we became self-focused and narrow-focused. That's why I became immediately concerned about being naked. And they started covering themselves, right? So we lost this sense of awareness. So I'm like, well, what was sin? And I really think that, and again, this is not a total answer to it, but I think sin, in many ways, is, first of all, it narrows our focus, right, to ourselves. But sin is also, I think, a lack of awareness of reality. And we talked about probably months ago, we talked about the idea that there's the ideal in life and then there's the real we have to operate in. And we always keep our eye on the ideal, but we have to operate in the real. And my theory is that what sin does is it tries to, it tells you a false ideal, right? It tells you, let me just use this.
Okay.
Let me just use this example. Oh, that woman over there, she will fulfill all of your dreams, but you're a married man. So you believe this lie that she'll fulfill all your dreams. And then eventually life catches up to you and maybe you ditch your wife, marry the new woman, and you realize, oh, shoot, this is just as bad, if not worse than what I had before. Yeah. Right? Because the whole premise started on an unreal ideal, right? And I think one of the things we're facing in our world today is we have this ideal of what should be, but then there's the reality of it. And sin, I think, is a false ideal. What do you think? Did I just completely confuse everything here?
Well, I mean, okay, so let's start with the awareness thing. At the fall, they didn't really lose all awareness. They just became aware of different things.
Right, narrow awareness, right?
Now they were aware of their situation, their condition, rather than the focus being on God.
Yeah.
So awareness, but it's not like they lost all awareness of reality. In some ways, they became aware of a new reality. Yeah.
Right. So okay, I'm thinking like in terms of a kid, like Elise thinks she knows everything she needs to know to get through this life. Mm-hmm. Until she realizes reality hits her and she doesn't realize everything she needs to know. Yeah. And I was that way, Yeah. You think you know a whole lot of stuff when you're 18, 20, but you become, and then you bump up against reality and you're like, and some people, and we're taught in our world that if reality, you don't like it, you can just make your own reality.
Yeah.
But eventually reality catches up with you. For example, let's talk about the transgender thing. That really concerns me because a lot of people are like, well, this is what I am right now. And then it changes, but what they're doing is they're doing irreparable harm to things that you can't change and not pay a price. So you take the hormone treatments, worst case scenario, you actually get body parts chopped off. Then one day you wake up and realize, oh, I don't want this anymore. But you've done irreparable damage to yourself. And the reality is you now can't accomplish what God has called us to do, which is be fruitful and multiply. So if the enemy wants to destroy us, which the beginning, Satan's goal was to separate man from God, right? And so what he does is he lies and tells you that this is what reality is, but eventually reality strikes. And I think God's principles and his laws in the Bible are really him making an effort to show us how to live in harmony with reality, spiritual reality, physical reality. So then in that case, sin is trying to live outside of harmony with, or trying to create it's living outside of reality is what it is.
Yeah.
And you pay the price for it. And that's why it hurts later, because reality always catches up. You can evade reality. And we live in this technological society where you think you can evade reality. And if I just get the physical change, everything else will line up. And it never does.
It doesn't work.
But I mean, you think about that. That's what Satan's goal is, to destroy humanity. That's why I think the transgender thing is so diabolical, because it's the ultimate way to, I don't have to destroy them. This generation won't be able to reproduce themselves.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, okay, so I'm thinking about that awareness thing you're talking about. And, again, Satan's desire is to, he comes to kill. The thief comes not but to kill, steal, and destroy. So, and then it says, the God of this world hath blinded their eyes. So in that awareness deal, when Adam and Eve fell, all of a sudden they came under the influence of the God of this world. And so their awareness, they became blind to one reality and aware of another reality. And I remember Pastor one time, he said this, he says, the spiritual world is more real than the physical world. And I thought, well, how can something be more real? I mean, I can touch this. This is real. How can something be more real? And years later, as it stuck with me, I thought, what is he talking about? Years later, it dawned on me, and I realized, oh, well, this physical world is real, but it will pass away. The spiritual world will last forever. It is eternal. And so it is actually, in a sense, more real. So by causing us to focus upon the reality of this world and blinding us to the reality of eternity, then you only live for this world, which is what we're talking about, sin. Again, missing the mark is literally what sin is, missing the mark. So we've been called to live for eternity. And if I'm only living for this day, I'm missing the mark. No matter what I'm doing, really. I might not be doing anything, quote unquote, evil, but if I'm living for today versus living for what I was created for, as Peter said it, we're strangers, we're aliens passing through this world. But if I'm only living for this world, then I am missing the mark, because the mark is living for eternity. Making sense? I don't know how this fits into the awareness of reality, but
if you don't know, this is how I figure out a book, by the way. I just talk it out, and
total confusion.
As the word becomes flesh and dwells among us, you go, yeah, that's stupid, or wow, that's powerful, right? Yeah, there's something about voicing I think that's why freedom of speech is so important too. You've got to be able to give voice to what you're thinking, and then see if it holds up in reality. Yeah.
Even if and sometimes when you hear yourself go, you go, that doesn't even make sense. But it did when I was rolling around in my head.
Yeah.
But now that I hear myself say it, or somebody else says, well, what about this? You go,
right, because you can figure it all out perfectly in your mind, and then when it comes out into reality, and there can be a resistance to it, or fight, push back on, what did you think about this?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't think about that. That undermines my whole argument, which is why when you're writing a book, you want to test the material, right? It's easy to sit in a log cabin for 6 months and come up with lofty ideas about your manifesto about how the world should work.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't hold up in the real world, if it doesn't hold up in reality, you're not onto something. You're just coming up, which, hello, we live in a world today where there are a lot of people who are creating unreplicatable results in science and stuff. You can't replicate the thing they came up with in this lab study, and then they call it science. But if it's not able to be replicated, it's not reality. And we literally live in a hyper reality that's not even reality, because people are doing it. So I'm going back to that God of this world. It's interesting. 2 Corinthians 4:4. The God of this age has blinded the minds of unbelievers so that they cannot see the light of the gospel that displays the glory of Christ, who is the image of God.
So there's that awareness. They're no longer able to even be aware of.
Yes.
That.
Yeah. But we have this treasure and tree. That's good. All right. So sin is rebellion against God, but even more than that, it's rebellion against reality.
These things are all way above my head. I have to think about that one for a little while.
No, really. So think about it. So if sin is rebellion against God and God is ultimate reality.
Okay, I can go.
Then sin is rebellion against reality. And whenever you rebel against reality, it's always going to burn you. because reality always, what is it? Reality bites back or whatever.
Yeah. Well, that's the other advantage of us talking about these things. I make you reduce them down to where the simplest person, I can understand them. These huge concepts that are up there. And I go,
if Dad can understand it, anyone can.
Could you put that in regular English so where I can even understand it?
Am I overthinking this though? So here's the thing. Am I trying to make the Bible fit my theory?
I don't know, but I kind of think it is kind of the G.K. Chesterton story to where you're going to have all these profound thoughts, and by the time you boil them all down, you're going to go, oh, gee, that's what they've been saying for 2,000 years, the whole church.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's held strong for a reason, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to find that exact quote from Chesterton, but
he tells a story about a young man who set out to find a new island and new discoveries, and he got blown off course and ends up claiming this island he finds for the queen, goes over the hill and finds out he got blown back to England. And that's how he illustrates the fact that I set out to discover the true religion. And when I came back to it all, I thought I discovered something new, but ultimately it was just orthodoxy. That's in the book Orthodoxy.
Yeah. That's it. Here it is. Here it is. I love this guy. I did try to found a little heresy of my own. And when I had put the last touches to it, I discovered that it was orthodoxy. Christian, yeah. All right. Well, thanks for listening in as we've worked through my...
Yeah, wait for the book.
Yeah, it may be a long time for that book. I'm still trying to figure out what I think about this. It's a book about the stages of the development of faith. And I think that roughly, the stages of development of faith roughly follows Piaget's stages of human development, like a child's development. And I think that our faith, our awareness of reality, follows that pattern of how a kid kind of comes in contact with reality and their awareness of themselves in context of the reality.
It makes sense, because so often God gives us pictures in the physical world so that we can understand the invisible spiritual realm.
Yeah.
So that would make sense.
I'm not using Piaget as the focus, but as I started thinking about kind of the development of my own faith, people I've been working with, I started realizing, this actually fits with Piaget, fits with Maslow, it fits with some of Kohlberg, like all their developmental stuff. You're like,
they discover a truth, and if it's a truth, then it's going to line up with the truth of the Scripture as well.
Yeah, all truth is God's truth. Mm-hmm. We just usually aren't smart enough to figure it out, and then somebody figures out a reality, and then we go, oh, well, actually, God already laid that out for us and how He dealt with. Usually, I think it's not even in something in the Bible; it's how He dealt with us. It's how He dealt with humanity. You see how He dealt with the children of Israel, giving them law. They needed law. And then there's this showing them grace and liberty. And it was for freedom that Christ set you free. And
in James, it talks about if you're a child, even if you're a child, you still need the law because you're not mature yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Well, for the two people who have hung on through this whole podcast, thanks for listening. It's been great to be with you.
Yes, it has.